Welcome to the Get Fit Guys, quick and dirty tips to get moving and shape up. My name is Brock Armstrong and I am the Get Fit Guy. Aside from being a way to look good in family photos, good posture is actually the way that we distribute our body's weight onto our tissues so that they can easily and efficiently respond and adapt to that weight. As you can likely guess, this is much more nuanced than simply standing up straight like our parents or our teachers instructed us to do as kids. Simply put, good posture means that each of your body parts is in the correct spot relative to your other body parts and relative to the gravitational pull of the earth. Make sense? Can you do that? Well, great. Then we're done here. Well, probably not, if only it were that easy. You know, when you heard me say the words good posture, you probably instinctively and immediately assumed your version of good posture. If you didn't, then go ahead and straighten up now. What did you do to improve your posture? Did you thrust your chest up, or did you pull your shoulder blades together, or perhaps both? Well, doing that may give the impression of good posture, but more accurately, all it did was lift your ribcage forward by shearing your vertebrae and then mashing your shoulder blades together. Now, that doesn't sound good, does it? When you're slouching forward, simply misaligning your ribs like this does not actually create the movement in your thoracic spine in the way that you think or even feel that it does. All it actually does is take that slouching forward curve of your upper spine and tilt it into an upward position. The curve is still there, it's simply pointing in a different direction. You see, many of us stand at least slightly lazily at all times, trying to conserve energy and feel relaxed. To do that, we stand with our neck jutted out, our shoulders slumped, our rib cage collapsed, our weight shifted onto one hip or the other, or maybe even just thrust forward into both, and our feet flared out like a duck. Now, stop and take a look at your body for a second. Are you standing like that now? The problem is that when you stand this way on a regular basis, your body gets very used to that posture and you get kind of stuck like that. Or at least it becomes your default stance. Not only is this an issue of bad geometry in combination with gravity, creating unhealthy forces on your bones and your joints and your tendons and your ligaments, but when you hit the gym or you engage in your favorite sport in this type of misalignment, well, then you're in real trouble. And this trouble will result in lowered performance, fewer strength gains, and of course, increased risk of injury. So, what is the right way to stand? Well, the easiest way to create a nicely aligned body is to imagine that there is a plumb line attached to various parts of your body. You know, those plumb lines that carpenters use to make sure that things are straight. If each one of those plumb lines is not heading toward, if not directly to, your midfoot or heels, well, then you're out of alignment. A nicely aligned body is a nicely stacked body. Ankles over heels, knees over ankles, hips over knees, ribs over hips, shoulders over ribs, and neck straight and tall. And finally, your head should be directly over your heels. Now, if any of those are out of place, then all the other bits need to realign themselves, incorrectly I might add, to compensate for that one out of place part. And that results in poor posture. Okay, let's take a second to focus on the ribs and pelvis. You know, in my experience of working with athletes, actors, dancers, and office workers, the real trouble happens in the ribs and the pelvis. So here's a test for you. Find a wall and stand with your back against that wall. Then place your heels about 6 inches or 15 centimeters away from that wall. Make sure your pelvis is neutral by aligning your anterior superior iliac spine or your hip bones with your pubic bone. Now, how much space is between your back and the wall? There should be some space between your lower back and the wall, but there should not be any space between your ribs and the wall. To fix that, bring the base of your ribs right down flat to the wall. Do this by lightly rolling the front of your ribs down. Now, check in and make sure that you haven't tucked or rolled your pelvis or are clenching your butt and flattening out your lower back. there should still be some room behind your lower back. Now, take a second and take stock. Are you staring down at the floor? Well, if you are, this is called kyphosis, and the fact that you don't always stare down at the floor like this is due to the fact that you have become a total pro at misalignment. Okay, but don't despair. I have a solution, and I'm going to get to that right after I talk about the other sponsor for today's podcast. All right, back to our misalignment. Now, because most of us spend a lot of time looking at a computer or a smartphone or other screens, we tend to have rounded shoulders and a head that's generally poking forward. Now, as we demonstrated in that last test, if we don't then misalign our ribs and our pelvis, our rounded shoulders and poking forward head will make us stare down at the floor. So now, instead of fixing the problem, we have actually compounded the problem. By standing, walking, or even sitting like this, we are beating up parts of our body because we're placing strain on tissues that, simply weren't adapted to bear that much stress. And that is why good posture matters so much. But that is also why good posture isn't simply about being able to stand at attention like a soldier. It's about having awareness and strength and flexibility to maintain that good alignment as you move through the world. Now, what is alignment exactly? Well, let's think of it this way. If you're a cyclist, you probably have had your wheel alignment or your spoke tension adjusted after you did something like going off of a sick jump or maybe just an unexpected curb. In this case, the bike mechanic, or you if you're technical like that, is not simply going to stare at your wheel and make it look pretty. That's because your bike's wheel alignment is all about how the wheel interacts with the road, with the brake pads, with the forks, with the chainstay, with the drivetrain, the hub, and so on and so on. The alignment needs to ensure that the wheel does not have any conflicts with any other parts of the bike, especially those that contribute to the forward movement of the bike. Okay, so aside from feeling bad about ourselves because we have been doing this wrong for most of our lives, what can we do about it? Well, here are 4 steps to better posture. Step number 1 is to stretch and loosen your pushing muscles. Now, just like those rounded shoulders that we talked about earlier, tight chest muscles can come from sitting at a desk for several hours with your hands on the keyboard, or from riding your now well-aligned bike in the aero or in the drop positions, or even from doing strength training or swimming. The problem is that once your chest is tight, these muscles can actually pull you forward into that rounded back slouch. Now, if you have tight pushing muscles, stretching them out on a regular basis is a great place to start. And some good stretches to loosen up your tight chest muscles are a doorway pectoral stretch, or a stability ball stretch, or an elbow wrap stretch, or even hands behind the back chest stretch. Now, you can also loosen your chest muscles by using a massage tool like a ball or a foam roller. Doing this before or after the stretches I mentioned can help make that looser feeling last a little bit longer. Now, the second step to better posture is to strengthen your pulling muscles. Now, some of the most popular exercises for strengthening these external rotators or pulling muscles is to use an elastic resistance band to work your shoulders and back in all the different directions. Another way is to do bigger multi-joint exercises, which have the added advantage of getting your heart rate up and working all the incidental muscles at the same time. Now, these can include regular or assisted pull-ups, lat pull-downs, reverse flies, seated rows, cable rows, and even single-arm dumbbell rows. Now, here's a pro tip. Make sure that you are focusing on squeezing your shoulder blades back while maintaining a nice long and tall back as you do these exercises. Now, another favorite of mine for this is the Superman, or what's called the prone Y extension. Now, with these exercises, you strengthen the shoulder blades, your upper back, and the lower back all at the same time. And as usual, don't worry, you don't have to remember all of these. Just go over to getfitguy.quickanddirtytips.com and I'll have all of these listed out so you can search for them and practice them on your own. Now, step number 3 to better posture is to work the core. I know, we've heard this a million times, but this is how it works. When you're walking down the street or riding your bike or swimming or just sitting at your desk, the one thing that has to happen right before you start to slouch is that your core poops out. And let's face it, that happens a lot sooner for some of us than it does for others, right? Well, if your core is nice and strong, it takes a load off of your shoulders, which allows you to display much better posture for a much longer amount of time. I personally like planks for this because they are a great way to strengthen both your core and your shoulders at the same time. And finally, step number 4 to better posture is to hang loose. Think back to the beginning of this article when I asked you to assume your version of good posture. Did you feel relaxed? Were you loose and comfortable? Or were you holding your breath and rigid to the touch? Now, instead of snapping to attention like a guard being inspected by the queen herself, I prefer to think of it like this. Imagine that you have a string coming out of the top of your head. One end of the string is running down your spine and attaching to your coccyx or your tailbone. The other end is attached to a large helium balloon that is floating above your head. And you, my little marionette, are standing straight and tall, stacked nicely above your heels, not through sheer force alone, but instead with ease, grace, and lightness of that helium balloon. Now, doesn't that sound like a nice way to move through the world? I think it does. Now, finally, when you're working on your alignment and your posture, don't worry if each change feels small and insignificant. A couple of inches or centimeters of shifting your hips back over your feet or bringing your rib cage down towards your hips for even just a few minutes a day is a great place to start. Even though these changes are small and subtle, as we learned today, every move toward good posture is a move toward being more aligned. And like the wheel on your bike, your body will last longer if everything is pointed in the right direction. Well, that's it for posture for this week, but before I wrap up, I want to let you know that, holidays can wreak havoc on your healthy habits. So, the nutrition diva, Monica Reinagel, and I have put together a little holiday survival kit, and it contains some daily nutrition and fitness tips and some good reminders. So, if you want to sign up to get this in your inbox for free, go over to brockarmstrong.com/healthyholiday. That's brockarmstrong.com/healthyholiday, and you can sign up right there on the page. All right, Get Fit Guy is written, narrated, and produced by me, Brock Armstrong, with editorial support from Joe Moscolino. And I want to let you know that if you've been enjoying this podcast, I'd love it if you headed over to iTunes to give it a review and a rating. It really helps other people discover this podcast, and it means a lot to me. And don't forget to join in the conversation at facebook.com/getfitguy or twitter.com/getfitguy or my own website, brockarmstrong.com. Now, my name is Brock Armstrong, and I'm the Get Fit Guy, asking you, what are you waiting for? Go stand up straight.